Welcome to another episode of Simple Thoughts. Today I'm going to be talking about the best ways to adapt a property into a movie. And I feel the best type of way to adapt a movie or to adapt some type of old property, the best method is take the original characters but have a totally different story. For instance, a good adaptation is would be Powerpuff Girls the movie. It took the characters and it told a story that wasn't really told in the series. We've seen the Powerpuff Girls beforehand, like fighting crime, doing good, and all that. But the one thing we've never seen is how did they come to be loved by the city of Townsville. That was something we've never seen before, and that worked best for it because ultimately, if you've never seen the show, you're learning something new as well as the fans of the show. Like people who've seen the show, they're learning something new because they've never seen how the whole story, how their origin story was. That was the one really good thing about the Powerpuff Girls movie. The sad thing is it bombed mainly because a lot of movies that came out at that time that were based on TV shows, a lot of the time they just sucked. Like most people were just sick and tired of it because it's like, okay, I'm lost. I'm watching this and I don't know what the fuck I'm watching. Mainly like the parents. The parents would take their kids to see, say, Digimon the movie or Pokemon the movie, and wonder, okay, I don't understand jack shit about what's going on here. So, I guess a lot of parents would look at, say, Powerpuff Girls and think, nope, like I'm not doing that again. And also, I would think a bit of it has to do with a bit of the masculinity. There were a lot of boy fans of Powerpuff Girls, but but the thing is like, could you really convince your parents to take you to see something called Powerpuff Girls? If they've never seen the show, they might think you want to see something called Powerpuff Girls. Because if in their minds they're thinking it's something like My Little Pony with just the title alone. And so a lot of people just ended up skipping that movie, and it bombed sadly. But to this day, looking back on it, it's really good. It's actually a legitimately good film, and it worked on different levels. It could please fans and please newcomers because you're both experiencing because both sides are experiencing a totally different story. Yes, you have familiar characters, but they're going through a dilemma that no one else has seen before. So I think that would work. In my mind, that's the best way to adapt any type of old property or property in general. A good Another good example is recently Captain Underpants the movie. That is honestly a really good adaptation because it just took the characters and just put them in a totally different origin story. Like the way it happens in the book, it's reminiscent of the way it happens in the movie. It's reminiscent of what happens in the books, but it's not exactly what happened in the books. It tells a totally different story. You're meeting totally different villains, and that's sort of what worked out in the long haul. It's like, okay, I know Captain Underpants. I grew up reading reading the actual books, so I already knew the origin story. But the way they did it, it's different because the villain in this movie, he didn't show up until like maybe the second book or so. So you're basically your mind is completely in a no man's land at this point because you as a fan, you've never seen this story. It's like, okay, this person was not here beforehand in the origin. They weren't part of the origin. So I guess they're going to tell a different story here. And that's not bad. It's a movie. You should be allowed to make changes. You're allowed to take some liberties. It's just the best liberty is stories. The story is what you should be taking liberties on. Never take liberties on the character. At least that's what I would think is the best, is what you should never do. Because if you take a liberty on a character, at that point, that's not the character people have grown to know and love. And you'd be betraying the original source material. So, other great examples are, say, the Marvel movies. They don't follow the original origin stories exactly to a T. They do take from the original stories, but they're following it very differently. Like, they know, okay, we can't just do the same thing as the comics, because if you do that, it begs the question, why make it a movie? Like, like a really bad, a real, like, one movie that didn't do too well with its adaptation was Batman the Killing Joke. Now, that was surprising, because it's like, you would think that would be a really good movie, but one, you ended up getting this tacked on storyline that had nothing to do with anything. Like, you literally could just cut that out and make it its own movie, and no one would be mad, because it's like, okay, that's some story, whatever. Well, people would still be mad because of the bat sex. Let's face it, no, no, just no. But it just didn't make sense, because it's like you have this extra 40 minutes or so that was never there, and it doesn't help build up the characters. It doesn't even it doesn't even properly segue, because one, you don't even have the Joker in this. It's like, this movie is supposed to have the Joker as the main villain, yet he doesn't show up until like the last 30 minutes of the film. It's like, how do you do that? It makes no sense. So, and that's what was bad about it. It's like, you ended up doing three things. You had the familiar characters, you had the original story, then you had a totally different story, but you also had the original story from the source material, from the original comic book. So it's like, that's not how you want to do that. Your best bet, honestly, it's your best bet would have been just trying some variations, things that clearly didn't work in the story of the comic book. It's like, you can change something there. You know, I don't think a lot of people get mad if it's like something that didn't work in the comic book, we just won't put into the movie, or we'll change it. You are allowed to make changes. It's best if you do, because otherwise we have no reason to differentiate. We feel like we have no reason to have this. It'll just feel like we have this property that's in movie form, but the thing is, it's following the original source to a T, that it begs the question, why do I need it in movie form? Like, there's no that's why you don't want a shot by shot remake of anything. Like, if you're gonna remake something, your best bet is something totally different from the original. Like, try something different, but keep the characters in mind. People fell in love with those characters. Your best bet is keep familiar characters, put them in different situations. That's ultimately what I feel a lot of people love about certain adaptions. Like, I just don't feel like it would make sense to just change up the character, because at that point it's like, what is this? This is not the character I grew up with anymore. This is someone totally different, and just a farce. Now, granted, you have certain movies that kind of get by changing some characters, mainly Guardians of the Galaxy. Like, Starlord, the way he acts in the comics is like, he doesn't act like that in the movies at all. Now, granted, because of that, they changed him up a bit. Like, he acts a lot different. The way he acts in the comics is very much different from the movies, and people love the movie version more than the comics, mainly because, well, the comic character was more do-goodery and whatnot. He wasn't like a total badass, break all the rules, do whatever I want type of guy. You know, he didn't seem like an outlaw. He didn't seem like a cool guy you would want to have a conversation with. So they were allowed to take some liberties there. In that case, that's where it sort of works to your advantage. You take a blank slate character and you change them into something a lot better. I mean, change them into something with more flair to them. You know, something that can attract. And that's ultimately what I think would be the best way to do it. A bad example of adaptions are, like, say, the Ratchet and Clank movie. It took familiar characters, and it did change up the story a bit from the original game, but the big problem that hurt it the most was really that if you've played they came out with a video game that literally had the cutscenes from the movie. So it's like, so why would I pay to watch a movie when I could play the video game of this movie and get an interactive experience? And that's one thing about video game adaptations I feel is a very tricky subject, is that when you adapt a video game into a movie, you're losing that interactive experience that people loved. So now you have to change. Now you have to do something absolutely totally different to justify this movie. And with Ratchet and Clank, they messed up by having the video game. If they didn't have the video game, it probably could have done a little better. Keyword little. I don't remember having that good of an ad campaign, and even then, the trailers weren't that good. I'm not gonna lie, they did not attract me. And I love the Ratchet and Clank movies. I was thinking, maybe, but once I played the game, I was like, yeah, I don't need to see the movie. I've seen the movie. I paid $40 for this video game, and I got an interactive experience out of it. Whereas with the movie, what am I gonna get out of it? I'm just gonna be sitting there watching the cutscenes from the video game. It's like, why would I want that? Why would I want to watch the cutscenes from a video game? Why would I pay to watch the cutscenes from a video game when I could just buy the video game and get an interactive experience? Like, that's one thing that hurt it the most. There's also the plans for the Sly Cooper movie that they were planning to have if Ratchet and Clank did well. Sadly, it didn't. It bombed. But I was interested because at one point I think they were trying to come up with, they were going to do something different. I was really interested because the way they did it is the characters did not look like how they did in the video games. And I think that could work to its advantage. You know, it's like, this is the movie version of it. They had the voices and everything. They sort of acted like the characters. I was thinking this could probably work if they go the route of if they had a totally different story. I think that really would have helped them best. Like, they probably could still use Clockwork, the main villain, but I think their best bet would be just do a different story though. Don't follow it to a T. Don't follow the video game to a T. That's ultimately what ends up hurting you in the end, because a lot of people are just gonna think, I've seen this before, you know, this is familiar. Like, your old fans are going to be like, I've seen this before. New fans will sort of like it, but a lot of the time they'll just think, wouldn't it be best to just play the video game since I get to, you know, actually experience it firsthand? That's sort of the big problem with adapting a lot of these video games. It's that they just tend they tend to change up too much or change too little, that it doesn't justify itself. Like, and a good example, I think, another type of property that gets adapted a lot would be anime, and we all know that does not have a good history. Like, that. But I think, because to this day, we still have the absolute best anime adaptation to this day. I think ultimately is Speed Racer. I think Ghost in the Shell is sort of taking that to somewhat. I think it might be taking that crown for right now. I haven't actually gotten to see it, but in my opinion, I thought Speed Racer was pretty good because it felt like it did feel like they put the effort in to try to make this like the original cartoon. The big downside is that's the problem. It's a live-action movie trying to be like a cartoon. That never works. Look at the Flintstones live-action movies. Like, no one likes those. Or say Yogi Bear, Smurfs, or anything like that. It's like, these are clearly these are fantasies. They're too fictionalized that they don't work. Like Speed Racer, a lot of the shit had all these techno colors. It's like, holy shit, how do you not have a seizure from looking at this? So, and that's what sort of hurt it. It's like you're clearly trying to be like the cartoon, but at the same time be a live action movie, and it's like you just can't. With all the fake CGI effects, it doesn't play out to your advantage. Your best bet would have been make it into an actual make it into an actual cartoon instead. And even then, I would suggest maybe you follow the story from the original show, but maybe not. You could probably change up what happened exactly. Like you sort of did. You sort of did that with the movie. So maybe you didn't have to completely negate it, but certain things is like you do need to cut out. Certain like there were certain races that happened in the middle that were like useless and did nothing for the narrative at all, and it's like should have removed that. You just should have removed that. But yeah, but there's one anime adaptation I know that one anime adaptation that kind of I'm a little curious about, and that's Alita Battle Angel, mainly because it's not the thing about it is it's gonna be very different from the original because the original source material it's unfinished. They never have had a fully developed. It was never fully developed. That was the thing about it. So one great thing about that means you could take as many liberties as you can, and no one can get too mad about it, because ultimately the original wasn't finished. Like you're allowed to it's basically saying you're allowed to finish this whole thing. You're allowed to make this your thing now because the original creator himself was just kind of dropped the ball on it. So you can be the one to finish it. You could be the one that puts this on, that makes this property great. So I'm excited for it. Like they got Rodriguez to work on this, and I'm interested. I was like, okay, it's his first big budget movie. They got a $200 million budget. It's like, whew. It's like okay, you have my interest right now, but my fear is that you're gonna bomb. You're gonna bomb because the 200 million, that's Marvel movie money. Like you have to be on point with that. Like you absolutely cannot fail with your advertising. Like you need to be advertising this day 24/7 throughout the time that you have it, because until the premiere date, because if you don't, it's gonna bomb, and that's gonna basically probably kill the anime adaptations. At that point, it's like, yeah, it cost us this much to make this, and it did not pay off. That's what I ultimately I don't know if it'll be good. I'm hoping it'll be good. Like I really want it to be good. Like I want this to be the big thing. I want this to be the big American anime movie adaptation renaissance. I want people to be able to I want this to be the movie that inspires more people to say, or inspires more studios to say, you know what, we can actually start adapting more animes and making them great. You know, it's just you gotta pay attention to what makes it great. A good way to, like I said, the best way is familiar characters, different story. That's what I think is your best bet usually. Like, don't change the characters, but just make it so they go through different struggles. That I think is what's always interesting. That's what you got to understand about great characters is that no matter what, you can put them if they are a strong enough character, you can put them in any type of situation and it'll still be entertaining to watch because they're such a great character. It the problem would be the main thing that I think a lot of studios don't understand is that they end up changing the characters because they think, well, this is how I'd say a focus group wants it to be, and it's like, no, okay, just keep them the way they are. That is the best bet for making a good adaptation. Ultimately, keep the characters the way they are, have a totally different story. That's what always, in my mind, is the best way to adapt any type of movie. And I think that's just what that's just the method more studios need to start adopting. If they want to make these make these old properties new and fresh and keep people attracted to them, it's like you just need to keep the characters the way they are and just do a totally different story. That is the ultimate formula in my mind. So what are your thoughts on movie adaptations of older properties? Like, comment, make love to the subscribe button, tease that little bell, and just remember, it's just a thought.
We gonna tell nobody so you can rock this party.